Following on from the video I did a few days ago about what happened when a lot of my trauma was unlocked, I want to talk about my journey from self-hate to self-love. And although this is the title of this video and what it's going to cover, this doesn't mean that now I'm in a constant state of self-love and always feel good about myself, because that isn't the case by any means. But having said that, I have certainly come a long way from how it was for me when I started. So I've got a number of bullet points here on a piece of paper, so I want to give you a general understanding of how it was for me in the beginning and how things have changed as time has gone by. So very early on, when I was around 16, I wasn't really aware at the time that I didn't value myself and that I carried a lot of self-hate. And this is because how I was experiencing life was normal. And so it didn't stand out. It's just what I knew, and I thought I didn't even think this is how life was, but it was. It was just how life was for me. And so the signs were there, but I didn't really notice them. But I would often feel down and depressed, and I would often experience at the time a lot of toxic shame. Now again, at the time I didn't realize this, but my face would often get really warm and I would often feel overwhelmed. And when this took place, when my face got really warm, I would feel the need to retract, to get away. So obviously I will go into fight or flight mode and just want to get away. Because of course, when there is toxic shame, relates to feeling as though there's something inherently wrong with us. So through me feeling that way, I thought at a deeper level, something is coming up, I'm feeling ashamed, I've got to get away from others, because if I don't, I will be exposed and I will be ostracized. So a lot of this was coming up for me. And at the time, again, I didn't know what was going on. And as the years went by, in 2003, and I got into self-development, I ended up using different tools and techniques that would allow me to basically push how I felt down a bit, to lose touch with it, and to create a false self where I was able to feel a bit better about myself. And this lasted for many years. I think it was when I was on a course and the instructor of the course said that we are no better, no one is better than anyone else. And because I had this false self, hearing that had a big effect on me, and it kind of knocked the false self, caused it to basically fall apart a bit, because I'd created this false self where I'd gone from feeling inferior to feeling superior. It wasn't that I developed this massive narcissistic personality disorder, but this false self I created allowed me to keep a lot of my shame at bay. And so once this started to crack, it was a lot harder then for me to feel good. And after that time, I continued to use different mind-based techniques and tools to avoid how I felt. And during this time, I obviously believed that my thoughts created my feelings, so it was all about the mind. And I used hypnotherapy and things like that to patch me up and to keep it together. But then it was in 2013, in the beginning, when a lot of trauma was unlocked. And this is a time when a lot of my toxic shame that had been pushed down came up. And I felt very bad about myself, along with the trauma, so the terror and the fear that came up. There's a lot of shame. And during this time, I often felt very low and wanted to die. I wanted my life to end. That was how extreme it was. And as I said, I partly wanted my life to end because I was in so much pain, and this was seen as the only way that it would stop. And another part of this was that I wanted my life to end because through feeling so bad about myself, this was seen as the only way out. And then in 2017, I had a lot of shame coming up then, and I didn't really want to be seen. I mean, this was something that was there before, but this came up really strong. I didn't really want to be seen. I felt very bad about myself, and because the false self had basically fallen apart, it was a lot harder for me to just put on an act and to act confident and to act as though everything was fine, because this had crumbled. I came to see also that I had a very strong inner critic. It was very critical, and it was more or less impossible for me to feel good about myself, because this toxic shame that I had wasn't just a feeling, it's something that permeated my whole being. And I couldn't just think it away. I couldn't just use affirmations or whatever to feel better about myself. And I came to see that I was carrying a lot of self-hate. And what I came to see was that the self-hate and the toxic shame that I carried and the strong inner critic was largely the result of what took place during my early years. And this was a time when I was often neglected and verbally and physically abused. And so all these things built up. And because at that age, I would have been egocentric. Everything was personalized. So it wasn't that there was something going on for my caregivers and they were in a bad way. It was that there was something wrong with me. So it wasn't that they were mistreated me because of perhaps they had been treated in the same way when they were younger and they hadn't dealt with it. It's because I was bad. I was inherently flawed. So that ended up and defining my view of myself and how I interpreted other people's behavior towards me. And over the years, through me dealing with what was going on up top, it didn't deal with the early trauma and the deeper beliefs that I had formed around what took place. And so as I worked with many different healers and therapists and did work on myself, I was gradually able to develop a sense of self-worth, because I came to see that I hadn't developed a felt sense of my own value or a felt sense of self-love. So as I gradually developed these things, I was able to let go a lot of shame, a lot of self-hate, and it became easier for me to feel good about myself. But as I said in the beginning, it's not that I always feel great, because that just is simply not the case. But I've certainly come a long way. So with that said, my message to you is that if you are not in a good way and you find it hard to feel good about yourself and to experience self-love, then what you went through wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve to experience life in that way, and you don't deserve to experience life in this way as an adult. But of course, for your life to change, it is essential that you reach out for the right support so that you can gradually change your life, because you deserve it.